I'm Kaylee, next here with Anthony Smith.
That's right. In just a few moments, we'll get to chat about some updates regarding Trevor Milton and his attempts to really not face any kind of prison time. We'll also get some updates on the freight markets going into the holiday season. But first, our top story deals with some updates coming from leadership of the Surface Transportation Board. Joanna Marsh is here to talk about the latest from Marty Oberman and what he has to say. Joanna, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you, Joanna, and thank you for joining us here on this short week. We've got some news coming out of the Surface Transportation Board, two different types, and both having to deal with leader Marty Oberman. First off, we're going to talk about his kind of strong words about UP CEO Jim Vena. Let's start there because he continues to be a very, very strong questioner of rail leadership, even though we're starting to see an improvement in rail service. Talk to us through some of his comments about Jim Vena.
Yes, so Marty Oberman, who's the chairman of the Surface Transportation Board, and other Class 1 executives, including UP's Jim Vena, were at a conference last week attended by John Kingston. It was in New York. It was the Rail Trends Conference. It's an annual conference hosted by Progressive Railroading, which is another rail publication, and independent analyst Tony Hatch, who has been on FreightWaves before. So Chairman Oberman at this meeting and at past meetings has been vocal about sort of his criticisms with the Class 1 railroads, the U.S.-based operations in particular, because of how they handled how they've been handling service issues, and especially during like the sort of the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Service has improved, steadily, in sort of starting, I guess, mid-late 2022 and this year, of course. And you have had all these, actually, in this year, you've had a lot of announcements between the Class 1 railroads kind of talking about partnerships to provide expanded or new intermodal service. So you have this backdrop. As this is happening, the former CEO of Union Pacific, Lance Fritz, announced his retirement, I think, in February of this year. And then Jim Vena, who actually did serve as sort of a chief operations person at UP and sort of guided UP in implementing the precision schedule railroading. He became CEO effective mid-August. And so at the Rail Trends Conference, Chairman Oberman was just kind of providing an updated some updated thoughts about how he viewed the rail industry as going, and he remarked that he appreciated the collaborations and partnerships happening between the railroads, but he also was critical of Union Pacific's recent announcements to furlough some employees, some mechanical employees, but also some in managerial positions. And some of this happened right at the transition when, between Lance Fritz and Jim Vena, and also like right afterwards. And so Chairman Oberman was questioning, why is that happening, especially since headcount reductions might have played a factor into service, the quality of service that customers have been receiving.
And Joanna, can you talk to some of the aspects around really them focusing on shareholder value and really what Marty Oberman's pushback was around that?
Yeah, sure. So I think at the conference, Chairman Oberman had mentioned, so I have to step back a little bit again. I feel like I'm like giving like these really long answers and don't really answering the question. So one reason why the Class 1 railroads have furloughed people in the past. Actually, there are two reasons. One is because it's been a historical practice that happens like in, like around the winter time. There are furloughs that happen with the idea that they'll be rehired like later in the spring and throughout the summer and fall. So there's been a historical practice. There's also been the industry practice of furloughing as a way to reduce costs, which kind of improves the how the financials look like for Wall Street. You have the reduced costs, but then growing revenue, and sort of that ratio is the operating ratio, which is a way that investors kind of look at a company to gauge of how well the company is doing health-wise and financially. So when Chairman Oberman had said that when some of the furloughs had occurred earlier this year at Union Pacific, they were because of sort of market pressures. And he sort of said, that's kind of, in a way that's kind of saying, like these furloughs indirectly are well, he was saying that these furloughs are a way of positioning UP to have a more attractive operating ratio, to have a more attractive sort of financial I can't think of the word, but just look more attractive to investors. So he was questioning whether that was part of the motivation for the furloughs.
I think it's interesting to see this much kind of critical questioning, especially with the news that was just released about Marty Oberman from him at the end of this conference as well. And it's now been released that he will not be seeking reappointment for the head of the Surface Transportation Board in 2024. His tenure technically ends at the end of this year, but he'll be staying on through the transition. Did this kind of come as a shock to a lot of folks? And if so, what do you think the plan is going forward? Are we going to be seeing an interim leader of the STB step in, or will we see now this another kind of thing to add to the plate of Congress is appointing a new STB chairman?
Yeah, so I think first off, I think it did throw people into a loop. I think people were generally surprised about it, just kind of like reading at the reactions from other publications and just other material. I think people were surprised that that Chairman Oberman, Freudian slip there, that Chairman Oberman decided not to seek another term. So his term ends in December 31st, but because of the way that the regulations are structured, he can stay on for, I think, up to another year, although I don't know if he actually will stay on for the full, for that full duration. So I think on one level, it throws people off because it brings another uncertainty into this whole sort of regulatory space. I mean, you've had the STB has been labeled as sort of like an activist STB, kind of trying to press the railroads to address shipper issues, and I feel like the shippers have felt like they've had an open ear at the STB with Chairman Oberman at the board, and so not having him there kind of raised that question. It seemed like there was this momentum going forward in terms of especially like with a lot of the provisions that are the board has under them right now, like reciprocal switching, that proceeding is still going forward, and you just have all these other issues that that the board is expected to address in 2024. But then, how will Chairman Oberman's departure affect the timing and also and even if the board will address those issues. That said, I from most of the time the board has been kind of in unanimous consent about going forward with some issues, although there are some other issues that have been kind of a split vote, either with 4 out of 5 members, Robert Primus being the dissenting, or the 2 Republican members, Michelle Schultz and Patrick Fuchs, kind of dissenting as well. And so that kind of, you're looking at yeah, I guess essentially, like, how will the board move forward with these shipper issues, and will it be a unanimous front, or will there be division within them? And of course, there's that question of when will a new person be nominated to replace Chairman Oberman, so that you have the timing of that, and then so it does kind of raise that uncertainty among everyone.
To watch, especially going into the presidential election next year. I kind of have a feeling they'll wait to see that nomination until they decide who is going to actually be in the White House. Joanna, thank you for joining us this morning. Have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, take care.